The Boy and the Talking Scarecrow. Well now, friends, before I get started with this tale that's been weighing on my heart for near 40 years, I need y'all to do me a mighty big favor. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. Don't wait till the end and forget about it. And while you're at it, give this old cowboy a thumbs up. It means the world to folks like me who got stories burning in our souls, just waiting to be shared. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for every word of what I'm about to tell you. The sun's setting behind me here on this old porch, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, just like it did that summer when I was 12 years old. That was back in 1987, down in Millfield County, Oklahoma, where the wheat grows tall as a man's shoulders and the wind carries secrets from one end of creation to the other. My name's Jake Morrison, and I've got a story that'll make you believe in magic again, even if you thought you'd lost that part of yourself somewhere along the way. It was the kind of summer that stretches out like molasses, hot and slow and sweet, where every day felt like it lasted a month, and every month felt like a year. I was staying with my granddaddy, Earl Morrison, on his farm about 15 miles outside of town. Mama had sent me there after Daddy passed that spring, said the fresh air and hard work would do me good. She wasn't wrong, but she had no idea just how good it would turn out to be. Granddaddy's place was something out of a Norman Rockwell painting. A white farmhouse with a wraparound porch, red barn that leaned just slightly to the left from years of Oklahoma storms, and fields that rolled on forever like a green ocean. The closest neighbor was old Mrs. Henderson, and her place was a good 2 miles down the dusty gravel road. Out there, you learned real quick that solitude ain't the same thing as loneliness, and that the land itself could be your best companion if you knew how to listen. Now, Granddaddy was what folks called a character. He was 73 years old that summer, tall and lean as a fence post, with hands that were weathered like old leather and eyes the color of the sky right before a storm. He wore the same faded blue overalls every day, patched at the knees with squares of denim that didn't quite match, and a straw hat that had seen better decades. He had this way of talking that made everything sound important, whether he was discussing the weather or the meaning of life, and he never used 2 words when one would do. The first week I was there, I spent most of my time moping around, missing Mama and Daddy, and feeling sorry for myself. I'd sit on the porch swing, picking at the peeling paint and watching the wheat wave in the breeze like it was taunting me with how peaceful everything was when my whole world had turned upside down. Granddaddy, he didn't push. He'd just bring me a glass of sweet tea or a plate of his famous cornbread, sit in his rocking chair, and whittle on some piece of wood while humming old gospel songs. It was on a Thursday morning, the kind where the air is so thick you can practically swim through it, that Granddaddy finally decided I'd wallowed long enough. He found me in the kitchen, stirring my cereal around without eating it, staring out the window at nothing in particular. "Boy," he said in that gravelly voice of his, "you look like a lost calf in a thunderstorm. How we fix that?" He led me out to the tool shed, a rickety building that smelled like motor oil and possibility. The walls were lined with tools that looked older than Moses, saws with wooden handles worn smooth, hammers with heads that gleamed despite their age, and coils of rope hanging like sleeping snakes. In the corner sat a pile of old clothes, burlap sacks, and baling wire. "We're going to build us a scarecrow," Granddaddy announced, pulling an armload of straw from a bale in the corner. "Crow's been getting into my corn something fierce, and I reckon it's time we gave them something to think twice about." Now, I'd helped Daddy build things before, birdhouses and such, but I'd never made a scarecrow. Granddaddy, he made it seem like we were constructing something sacred. We started with 2 pieces of weathered wood, forming them into a cross that would serve as the frame. Then came the clothes, an old pair of Granddaddy's work pants, patched and faded to the color of dust, and a red flannel shirt that had seen better days but still had life in it. As we worked, stuffing the clothes with straw and wire, Granddaddy told me stories about the farm, about how his daddy had homesteaded this land back in 1923, clearing it with nothing but determination and a borrowed mule, about the Dust Bowl years when the topsoil blew away and folks thought the world was ending, but the land came back stronger than ever, about the night Granddaddy met my grandmama at a church social, how she was wearing a yellow dress that made her look like sunshine itself, The Scarecrow took shape under our hands like something alive. We gave him boots, old leather ones with holes in the toes that Granddaddy said had walked more miles than most cars had driven. For a head, we used a burlap sack, stuffing it with straw until it was round and full. Granddaddy let me draw on the face with a black marker, 2 simple dots for eyes, a curved line for a nose, and a crooked smile that somehow looked friendly instead of scary. Every Scarecrow needs a name, Granddaddy said as we stepped back to admire our work. What do you think we should call him? I studied our creation, this figure that looked like he belonged in these fields, like he'd been standing guard here since the beginning of time. How about Elmer? I said, thinking of the old farmer in the cartoons I used to watch. Granddaddy nodded approvingly. Elmer it is. Elmer Morrison, guardian of the corn. We carried Elmer out to the middle of the cornfield, where the stalks were already knee-high and rustling with secrets. Granddaddy had prepared a post, and we mounted our Scarecrow with ceremony, making sure he faced the morning sun. When we were done, Elmer stood there like a sentinel, his flannel shirt rippling in the breeze, arms outstretched as if he was welcoming the whole world to his domain. That night at dinner, Granddaddy and I sat on the porch eating fried chicken and watching the fireflies dance among the corn. The air was soft and warm, carrying the scent of honeysuckle and the distant promise of rain. I felt better than I had since Daddy died, like maybe there was still some goodness left in the world after all. Granddaddy, I said, swinging my legs from the porch steps, do you think Elmer will really keep the crows away? He took a long sip of his coffee, considering the question like it was the most important thing he'd ever been asked. Well now, Jake, that depends on what you mean by keeping them away. A Scarecrow's job isn't necessarily to scare everything off. Sometimes it's just to make things think twice before they act. Sometimes the idea of something is more powerful than the thing itself. I didn't fully understand what he meant then, but I would soon enough. The next morning, I woke up early, drawn by something I couldn't name. The sun was just peeking over the horizon, painting the world in shades of gold and possibility. I wandered out to the cornfield, barefoot in the dew-wet grass, wanted to check on Elmer. What I found stopped me in my tracks. Our Scarecrow was gone. Well, not gone exactly, but moved. Instead of standing in the center of the field where we'd left him, Elmer was now at the eastern edge, facing a different direction entirely. His arms, which had been spread wide the night before, were now positioned as if he was pointing towards something in the distance. I ran back to the house, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Granddaddy was in the kitchen, frying eggs and humming an old hymn. When I burst through the screen door, practically tripping over my own feet, he turned around with one eyebrow raised. Elmer moved. I gasped, pointing toward the field. He's not where we put him. Granddaddy set down his spatula and followed me outside. We walked to where Elmer now stood, and Granddaddy examined the ground around the post with the intensity of a detective. After a few minutes, he straightened up and scratched his chin. Well, I'll be, he said quietly. Looks like the wind must have been something fierce last night. Sometimes these Oklahoma storms can move things around pretty good. But there hadn't been any wind that I could remember. The night had been still as glass, perfect for sleeping with the windows open. I started to say as much, but something in Granddaddy's expression stopped me. He had that look adults get when they know more than they're saying, like he was protecting me from something I wasn't ready to understand. Over the next few days, I found myself drawn to the cornfield like a moth to flame. Every morning, I'd check on Elmer, and every morning, he'd be in a slightly different position. Sometimes he was facing the barn, sometimes the road, sometimes the old oak tree that marked the property line. It was as if he was keeping watch, patrolling the farm in the darkness. I started spending my afternoons sitting near Elmer, reading books from Granddaddy's collection, or just watching the clouds drift by. There was something peaceful about being near him, like he was a friend keeping me company. The corn grew taller around us both, until we were surrounded by green walls that rustled with every breeze. It was on a Tuesday, about 2 weeks after we'd built him, that Elmer first spoke to me. I was lying on my back in the dirt, staring up at the sky and thinking about Daddy. The grief would hit me like that sometimes, unexpected as a summer storm. One minute I'd be fine. The next I'd be drowning in memories and wishing things were different. I was right in the middle of one of those moments when I heard it. Beautiful day, isn't it, young Jake? The voice was warm and friendly, with just a hint of a southern drawl. It sounded like someone who'd spent a lifetime smiling, even through hard times. I sat up so fast I got dizzy, looking around for whoever had spoken. But there was nobody there except me and Elmer. "Down here, son," the voice said again, and this time I saw it clearly. Elmer's burlap mouth was moving, the crooked smile I'd drawn shifting and changing as he spoke. "No need to look so spooked. I've been wanting to have a proper conversation with you for days now." Now, I should have been terrified. Any sensible 12-year-old boy would have run screaming back to the house. But something about Elmer's voice, about the gentle way he said my name, put me at ease. It felt as natural as breathing, like talking scarecrows were the most normal thing in the world. You're really talking," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. "Well, I should hope so." Elmer chuckled, and even his laugh sounded like something good, like the sound of wind chimes on a summer evening. "I've been standing here for 2 weeks now, watching you mope around like the world's about to end. Figured it was time somebody told you a few things about life that your granddaddy's too polite to mention." I scooted closer, fascinated despite my shock. "How are you alive? How can you talk?" Elmer's burlap head tilted thoughtfully. "Now, that's a question that could take all day to answer proper. Some things in this world don't need explaining, Jake. They just need accepting. I'm here because I'm needed, and I can talk because you need someone to listen to who isn't carrying around their own bucket of worries." "What do you mean?" "Your granddaddy's a good man, best kind of man there is. But he's hurting too, you know? Losing your daddy, that was his boy. He's trying to be strong for you, trying to hold everything together, but grief's got its hooks in him, same as you. Sometimes a boy needs to talk to someone who's got nothing but time and patience." I hadn't thought about granddaddy being sad too. In my 12-year-old mind, adults were supposed to have everything figured out, supposed to be strong enough to handle anything life threw at them. The idea that granddaddy might be struggling with his own pain was something new to consider. "Is that why you move around at night?" I asked. "Because you're alive?" "I move around because that's what guardians do," Elmer said simply. "We keep watch. We make sure everything's as it should be. And sometimes when a young boy needs a friend, we make ourselves available for conversation." That afternoon, I stayed in the cornfield until the sun started to set, talking with Elmer about everything and nothing. He told me stories about the farm that Granddaddy had never mentioned, about the family of foxes that lived in the woods beyond the wheat field, about the owl that hooted every night from the old oak tree, about the way the corn whispered secrets when the wind was just right. He had a way of making even the ordinary seem magical, like the whole world was full of wonders just waiting to be noticed. When I finally headed back to the house, I felt lighter than I had in months. Granddaddy was waiting on the porch with a plate of his famous chocolate chip cookies and a glass of cold milk. "You were out there a long time," he observed, settling into his rocking chair. "Good conversation?" I almost choked on my milk. "What do you mean?" Granddaddy's eyes twinkled in the porch light. "Sometimes the best conversations are the ones we have with ourselves, Jake. Sometimes we just need the right listener." That night, I lay in bed thinking about what Elmer had said about Granddaddy grieving too. The next morning, instead of rushing out to the cornfield, I stayed in the kitchen and helped with breakfast. Granddaddy seemed surprised but pleased, and we worked together in comfortable silence, frying bacon and scrambling eggs. "Granddaddy," I said as we sat down to eat, "tell me about Daddy when he was little." His fork paused halfway to his mouth, and for a moment I thought I'd said something wrong. Then his face softened, and he smiled the kind of smile that comes from deep memories. "Your daddy was a pistol," he said, setting down his fork. "Always getting into something, always asking questions about everything. He was about your age when he decided he wanted to be a cowboy. Spent the whole summer wearing his toy spurs to bed, practicing his quick draw with a water gun. Granddaddy told me stories all through breakfast about the time Daddy tried to ride the neighbor's bull and ended up in the pond, about how he'd sneak out at night to watch for shooting stars, about the way he'd sing along to the radio while doing chores, never caring if he was off key. Each story was like a gift, showing me parts of my father I'd never known. That afternoon, when I went to visit Elmer, I found him in a new position again, this time facing the house, as if he'd been watching our morning conversation with approval. "Sounds like you and your granddaddy had a good talk," he said as I settled into my usual spot beside him. "How did you know? I keep watch, remember? Besides, you both looked a little lighter when you came outside. Grease got weight to it, Jake. When you start sharing it instead of carrying it all by yourself, you can actually see the difference in how a person moves." Over the following weeks, Elmer became my confidant and teacher. He taught me about patience by showing me how to watch the corn grow, inch by inch, day by day. He taught me about courage by encouraging me to help Granddaddy with the harder farm chores, even when I was scared I'd mess them up. He taught me about hope by pointing out all the small miracles that happen around us every day. The way morning glories climbed the fence posts, the way baby rabbits played in the meadow, the way thunderstorms cleared the air and left everything smelling fresh and new. But it was the lesson about love that changed everything. It happened on a Saturday in late July. The corn was tall now, over my head in most places, creating green corridors that felt like nature's own cathedral. I was telling Elmer about a dream I'd had about Daddy, how we'd been fishing together at the old pond, and how real it had felt. "Dreams are funny things," Elmer said thoughtfully. "Sometimes they're just our minds sorting through the day's clutter, and sometimes there's something more. Sometimes they're visits." "You mean Daddy was really there?" "Love doesn't die, Jake. Bodies die, but love, real love, that goes on forever. It changes form sometimes, shows up in dreams or memories, or the way sunlight hits a field just right and reminds you of someone's smile. But it never truly goes away." That evening, I helped Granddaddy with the evening chores, feeding the chickens and checking the water troughs. As we worked, I found myself really looking at him for the first time in weeks. I saw the way his shoulders had started to stoop, the new lines around his eyes, the way he moved a little slower than he used to. But I also saw the careful way he scattered feed for the chickens, making sure each one got their share, and the gentle pat he gave old Bessie the cow when she nuzzled his shoulder. "Granddaddy," I said as we walked back to the house, "I miss Daddy something awful." He stopped walking and turned to look at me, his weathered hands resting on the fence rail. "I know you do, son. I miss him too. Every day." Elmer says love doesn't die. Something flickered across Granddaddy's face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "Elmer's a wise fellow," he said quietly. "He's right about that. Love's the one thing in this world that's stronger than death, stronger than time, stronger than anything that tries to break it down." That night, I dreamed about Daddy again. We were sitting in the cornfield, and he was telling me how proud he was of how I was helping Granddaddy. When I woke up, I could swear I smelled his aftershave, that old spice scent that always made me feel safe. August arrived with a heat wave that made the air shimmer like water. The corn was ready for harvest, and Granddaddy hired a crew to come help bring it in. For 3 days, the farm was busy with activity, tractors rumbling through the fields, workers calling out to each other, the sound of corn being loaded into trucks that would carry it to market. I spent those days helping where I could, fetching water for the workers and staying out of the way of the big machinery. But every spare moment, I found myself checking on Elmer. The harvest was getting closer and closer to where he stood, and I started to worry about what would happen to him when the corn around him was cut down. On the last day of harvest, I couldn't stand it anymore. I ran to Granddaddy, who was talking with the crew foreman about the final field. "What about Elmer?" I asked, tugging on his sleeve. "What's going to happen to him?" Granddaddy looked toward the cornfield, where our Scarecrow stood like an island in a sea of stubble. "Well, I suppose we'll have to move him," he said. "Find him a new spot to keep watch from." But when the crew finished that last section and the dust settled, Elmer was gone. Not moved, gone. There was no sign of him anywhere, no scattered straw or fallen clothes, no post lying in the dirt. It was as if he'd simply vanished into thin air. I searched everywhere, calling his name like he was a lost pet. The workers helped for a while, probably thinking I was just upset about losing a toy. But Elmer wasn't anywhere to be found. As the sun set on the empty field, I finally had to accept that he was gone. That night, I cried for the first time since Daddy's funeral. I cried for Elmer, for Daddy, for the end of summer and the beginning of things I didn't want to face. Granddaddy found me on the porch swing, tears streaming down my face like a summer storm. He's gone, I said between sobs. Elmer's gone, and I didn't even get to say goodbye. Granddaddy sat beside me on the swing, his arm around my shoulders. Sometimes goodbyes happen whether we're ready for them or not, he said softly. But that doesn't mean they're really endings. Sometimes they're just changes. What do you mean? Well, Elmer did his job, didn't he? He kept watch over the corn, kept the crows away, kept you company when you needed a friend. Maybe now that the harvest is done, he's moved on to help someone else who needs him. I wanted to believe that, but it hurt too much to think about Elmer somewhere else, talking to some other lonely kid. I'm going to miss him. Of course you will. Missing folks is part of loving them. But Jake, I want you to think about something. All those conversations you had with Elmer, all those things he taught you, what do you think those came from? I wiped my nose on my sleeve. From him. Maybe. Or maybe they came from inside you, from the part of you that's wise and kind and strong. Maybe Elmer was just helping you find your own voice. The idea was too big for my 12-year-old brain to fully grasp, but something about it felt true. Over the next few days, as we cleaned up after the harvest and prepared for my return to school, I found myself remembering Elmer's words and applying them to new situations. When Granddaddy's arthritis was acting up, I remembered what Elmer had said about small kindnesses and helped with the heavier chores without being asked. When I started worrying about starting 7th grade, I remembered his lessons about courage and took a deep breath instead of panicking. The night before Mama came to pick me up, Granddaddy and I sat on the porch one last time, watching the stars come out over the empty fields. The silence between us was comfortable now, filled with shared memories and understanding. Granddaddy, I said, do you think I'll ever see Elmer again? He rocked slowly in his chair, considering the question. I think you'll see him anytime you need to, Jake. Maybe not with your eyes, but with your heart. Some friends are like that. They stay with you long after they're gone. I went back to school that fall a different boy than the one who'd arrived at the farm in June. I was still sad about Daddy, still missed him every day, but the sadness had changed. Instead of the crushing weight that had been dragging me down, it had become something I could carry, something that reminded me of how much I'd been loved. Years passed. I grew up, went to college, got married, had kids of my own. Granddaddy lived to be 91, long enough to meet his great-grandchildren and tell them stories about their daddy when he was young. When he passed, he left me the farm, and I moved my family back to that same white house with the wraparound porch. My own son, Tommy, was 12 when we moved back, the same age I'd been that magical summer. He was struggling with the transition, missing his friends from the city, feeling like he didn't belong in this rural world of open fields and long horizons. One evening, I found him sitting on the porch swing, looking lost and lonely. Want to help me with a project? I asked. I led him out to the tool shed, now filled with my own tools alongside Granddaddy's old ones. In the corner sat a pile of old clothes, burlap sacks, and baling wire, exactly where they'd been 30 years ago. Tommy looked confused, but he helped anyway as we built a scarecrow together, just like Granddaddy and I had done. We named him Chester, and we carried him out to the middle of what was now a soybean field. As we worked to secure him to his post, I told Tommy stories about the farm, about his great-granddaddy, about the summer that changed my life. He listened with half an ear, more interested in getting the job done than in hearing old family tales. That night, I lay in bed thinking about Elmer, wondering if Tommy would have his own magical encounter. Part of me hoped he would, and part of me worried that the magic had been meant just for me, for that specific time and place when I needed it most. The next morning, I found Tommy in the kitchen, staring out the window toward the field with a strange expression on his face. "Dad," he said slowly, "did we put Chester facing the road yesterday?" I looked out the window to where our scarecrow stood. He was indeed facing the road now, though I distinctly remembered positioning him to face the morning sun. "Maybe the wind moved him," I suggested, echoing Granddaddy's words from so long ago. Tommy looked at me with eyes that seemed older than his 12 years. There wasn't any wind last night. That afternoon, I found him sitting beside Chester in the soybean field, talking quietly. I couldn't make out the words from where I stood at the edge of the field, but I could see the animation in Tommy's gestures, the way he leaned forward as if listening to responses I couldn't hear. When he came in for dinner, he seemed different, lighter, more settled. Over the following weeks, I watched him transform from a sullen city kid into a young man who belonged on this land. He started helping with chores without being asked, exploring the woods and meadows with the curiosity of a born naturalist, sitting on the porch in the evenings and actually listening to the stories I told. One evening, as we sat together watching the sunset paint the sky in familiar shades of amber and rose, Tommy turned to me with a serious expression. "Dad, Chester's been teaching me things." "What kind of things?" "About patience and courage and how love doesn't die even when people do. About how sometimes the best conversations are the ones we have with ourselves, but we need the right listener." The words hit me like a lightning bolt. They were so close to what Elmer had taught me, spoken in almost the same way. I looked at my son, this boy who was learning the same lessons I'd learned at his age, and I understood something profound about the nature of love and memory and the way wisdom passes from one generation to the next. "Chester sounds like a wise fellow," I said, borrowing Granddaddy's words. "He is. Dad, do you think Great-Granddaddy ever talked to scarecrows when he was young?" I thought about Earl Morrison, about the way he'd known exactly what a grieving boy needed that summer, about his unsurprised reaction to my stories about Elmer. I think wisdom finds a way to pass itself along, Tommy. I think it shows up wherever it's needed, in whatever form will be most helpful. So Chester isn't really alive? Does it matter? If he's helping you, if he's teaching you things you need to know, if he's being a friend when you need one, does it matter whether he's really alive or not? Tommy considered this, his young mind wrestling with concepts that adults spend lifetimes trying to understand. I guess what matters is that he's real to me. Exactly. That harvest season, when the soybeans were ready to come in, Chester disappeared just as Elmer had done. Tommy was sad, but not devastated. He understood, in the way that children who've been touched by magic understand, that some friends are meant to be temporary, but their gifts are permanent. Now Tommy's grown, with children of his own, and the cycle continues. Just last summer, his daughter Emma, struggling with her parents' divorce, spent a few weeks at the farm. She's 8 years old, wise beyond her years, but carrying burdens too heavy for such small shoulders. Yesterday, I helped her build a scarecrow we named Jasper. This morning, she came to breakfast with dirt on her knees and wonder in her eyes. "Grandpa Jake," she said, "I think Jasper might be magic." And I smiled, remembering another summer, another child, another scarecrow who appeared exactly when he was needed most. Because that's what love does. It finds a way to keep giving, to keep teaching, to keep healing the broken places in our hearts. It puts on different faces and speaks in different voices, but it never really leaves us. Sometimes it wears overalls and speaks with Granddaddy's wisdom. Sometimes it's made of straw and burlap and speaks with the voice of a friend. Sometimes it's the memory of a father's love, strong enough to bridge the gap between this world and whatever comes after. But it's always there, always real, always ready to remind us that we're not alone in this world, that someone is keeping watch, that love is indeed stronger than death. The sun's setting now behind this old porch, painting the sky in those familiar shades of amber and rose. The fields are quiet, the harvest done, another season complete. Somewhere out there, I know, a scarecrow stands guard over dreams and hopes and the endless possibility of tomorrow. And if you're lucky, if you're open to magic, if you need it enough, maybe, just maybe, he'll have something important to say to you too. Well, friends, if this old tale touched your heart the way it's been touching mine for all these years, I sure would appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Stories like this need to be shared, passed along from one person to another like seeds on the wind. There's more where this came from, tales of love and loss, hope and healing, all the beautiful, messy, magical stuff that makes life worth living. So stick around, share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, sometimes the most important conversations are the ones we have with the friends who appear exactly when we need them most. Until next time, keep watching for magic, because it's out there waiting for you. God bless and good night.